expert. Thank you very much, everybody, and thank you for coming. Whoops, those are the Koreans. Thank you very much for making the effort to come here on a Sunday instead of going out for a nice white wine or a martini. I'm going to tell you about an investigation that was carried out and a series of attacks carried out worldwide, and I'm going to tell you about experience. I'm going to tell you about the crisis itself, and then I'm going to look at some side attacks that took place. Obviously, if you have any doubts, if you have any questions, I'll be here. If you want to come and ask me, my name's Pedro Sánchez, a very simple name for the good or the worse. Pedro Sánchez, by the way, is the name of a very well-known politician in Spain. In any case, what I'm showing you now is has to do with the experience I've been acquiring for the last 20 years in the area of cybersecurity. Very quickly, I'd like to say that I collaborate in events response. I also work for NATO and for other organizations. I also work in defense. I'm a professor. I've also worked for Deloitte, and right now I work in CSO for a company that deals with industrial cybersecurity and many more things. Well, let's look. I'd like to begin my presentation giving a look, taking a look at a cyber attack in order for us to start from the same place, the same grounds, and this what this looked like in the past. I'm referring to the beginnings of the internet when we spoke about information highways, when there were no mechanisms that could stop a company from operating. There was the idea of a hacker as somebody who did things and could go into a machine and access. And there was this idea of ego, but just to say how good I am or how or I'm better than you and I'm smarter than you. And infection means were just very few. Email was beginning, and we started to see a graphical chart that is messenger, and we had disks or very simple things regarding infection. But all this changed and moved to passed on to a much more complex thing, that is how a good attacker attacks a good hacker. And I'm referring to those that are very difficult to be chased, to be caught. Somebody will say, well, you know, we've been attacked by an attacker, by a hacker, a very good one, and you say, is it just one? Are you sure it's just one? I'm sure he's part of a team, is a team that's after you. One of the instructions in this organization, when we went into the server and looked at the compromise, we realized that there was an employer, a document manager, and there was a document, and when we went into it, there were 15 people with their names, with their nicks, and each one had a task they had to carry out. One of them had to deal with antivirus evasion, the other one had to deal with websites, the other one had to make sure the system wouldn't be recognized by the operating system. So 15 people working for this. This is a software development company against the world. And and we think that the antivirus is going to be able to detect them. I can guarantee you it won't. And I'm speaking about the good ones, the ones that are very difficult to be caught, and they don't set an appointment in a bar. No, they don't know each other. They set appointments in very safe, secure environments. So you have to go into this world, and going to this world is very difficult. It's very difficult because you've got to do several things. You've got to be one of them, or to be given a green light or be authorized in order to go in. And what do attackers do? Well, they use the same thing that you use in real life. I'm not going to go into shopping mall and say I want to go in. No. So what you do is to investigate. They start seeing, well, this company, what's the stuff, what have they published in the internet, what information are they getting, this person LinkedIn, what do they have? They do scoring, they score the employees, and they use a typical technique that is deceit. And after so long, one may think, hey, and we've just now realized, I have an anecdote I always tell from 2005, 2007, and there was a lieutenant. I would tell, listen, careful, Chinese have a cyber army. We're speaking about many years ago. And we say, well, just look out the window, look out the window. And I went to the window, and he'd say, what do you see from the window? What can you see? What can you see? Well, I can see, I don't know, soldiers, everybody doing things. And what else? What else do you see? I don't know. I don't know what to say. Well, more and more and more. Tanks. Well, yes, tanks. What else? How are they going to attack me if I'm the guy with the bombs? How will they attack me? And I said, well, I didn't know. We're speaking Chinese. You think this is war, a traditional war? No, this is no longer traditional war. War's not going to come with tanks. And this starts with through many mechanisms. So attackers evolve. And when I'm saying they evolve towards sectors they can get lots of information from. And the first part is intelligence. That is, what can I get, what can I obtain from this organization? And don't think this is an attack I'm launching today and I take away everything. No, I start creating profiles today, and if things go well, I'll run the intrusion in a year. I am not no hurry. I'm being paid for this, and I have 15 people working for me who are attacking this. So there's a lot of this. What they do is create fake profiles. They go into the LinkedIn. If you send me an invitation over LinkedIn, you say, Pedro, I was in CyberCamp at noon yesterday. I'll accept because I believe you, but I don't know you. Don't you think this happens in an organization? Somebody will say, well, I was in that event, I gave a presentation, and we were together in a party, and all there is a public information in the internet. And that's a reality. Once you create your own false cues, leads, also fake leads. You go into the LinkedIn and you see real things, Facebook, LinkedIn, and you believe it. And then the next day I move on to the following step, which is the attack proper. Okay, now I've got it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this attack and I'm going to position it. And when they send the PDF, I'm going to send it with a present, with a gift. And when they open the PDF for what happened, well, they didn't send it well, they'll send it well again. So you accept, and there you go. It's in the machine. And when you run this in the machine, what do the bad guys do? They don't rob, they don't steal the passwords. No, they don't do that. Bad guy, what he does is to say, where am I now? Where am I? Where am I? And this means time. So as soon as I'm in, as they're in, what they say is, well, I'm in the machine. Where am I in the machine? You know what they take away? They take the logs. Why? I'm going to tell you about Windows because it's more vulnerable. Somebody's ever seen a Windows log? Two things. They're difficult to understand. Error in the module 0, this and that. But there are other things that you can use from the log. If there's the name of the equipment, says Lola, well, this doesn't sound too corporate. Maybe this is a private home. If the equipment is called PC-00, and a name in a log, use the antivirus version, then domains, IPs. So there are many things inside a log. What does the bad guy do? He improves his attack in order for it to be undetectable as much as possible in the victim's equipment. And once he has this, he sends it because he perfected it and moves to the following stage. And this stage is the control stage. I'm already and here I'm start collecting steps, and don't think they start stealing or robbing right away. What they do from now on in recollection is to simply do tracking. Use a tracking technique. These are techniques that have become usual thing in the American army, for instance, and the hacker all of a sudden yells, screams to see if somebody turns around. If nobody turns around, it means that nobody heard him. So he scans the equipment and the equipment next to it and disconnects, because if perimeter alarm went off, the administrator will say, what's going on? There's a scanning. What's happening? And when he goes in, there's nothing because the hacker is disconnected and is no longer there. The security administrator is there, or manager there, and nothing's happening. What do? They switch off and on. And since this doesn't happen again for a week, they forget about it. They say, well, I don't know, maybe a failure, I don't know. So the computer, the hacker connects again, and they go to the next machine. They don't just attack one equipment, but several. They're inside the machine and they connect. They scream again. They yell again. And here they start scanning different devices, network device, databases. They start drawing a map of the network. And this very carefully, measuring very good timing, no hurry. And when they see that an organization isn't ready, either because they have no logs you can get information from, or because they don't have any perimeter powerful tools, or because the computer, the whole computer thing inside of an SME is outsourced, so they don't do it themselves. So the hacker starts rolling out, deploying himself through the net. So what they do is they develop a malware. Usually, the times of hackers died. Now they've become professionals. Now they don't want to be famous or in the media. They want to be able to sell that tool. And so they developed this. And based on this, a small introduction of how they act, I'd like to tell you about a case. I'm going to show you something. Let's look at the event itself, how it happened and what happened and how they found out. And a company dealing with industrial cybersecurity where they develop operating systems for given defense mechanisms, weapons, clothes. So what happens? Major companies do audits, and when you audit a company, you get a list of users with well, this is a weird name. And one manager asks the other, administrator asks the other, and they says, "Did you do this?" "No, I didn't do it." And if they didn't do it, then I'll ask the guys who we outsourced, and we go, "Did you do this?" "No, you never gave me the password. I didn't do anything." So all of a sudden, some things you say, I don't know, something's going on. Something's going on. Let's look at the antivirus. Now, in the antivirus, there's nothing under quarantine. And by the way, whenever has a malware picked up by the antivirus and you have it in quarantine, you say, caught it. But no, what a nice antivirus. No. You need to investigate and see when this happened. How long's it been in? What did it do for this time? And sometimes you don't even question things, and we need to. And going back to details, you start seeing that they find executables in a whitelist, and you go, wow, the antivirus, it's skipping them in certain folders with a temp directory of Windows, and they just skip them. So somebody's there, somebody's manipulating things, somebody had access to the antivirus server. And all of a sudden, files with all the passwords of antivirus directory, a whole bunch of passwords, and here we start seeing the problems. And now imagine here what's happening now is a crisis, a big crisis is going on, and it's happening. And sometimes crises, and by the way, for instance, people, are not simple. They start putting pressure. People start putting pressure because they see that some things haven't been done well, or they could have been done better. So what you do, you go in a meeting and you start defending, and this is when you start seeing the problems in the company. First of all, lack of training. Soccer team that doesn't train, they don't learn. So you need to train. You need to train, and if you don't, you need to rehearse. You need to work. And for instance, say there's a malware. What do I need to do if there's a malware? I switch off and on. So I start describing mechanisms, and this is the problem. There's no training. And going to details, you find an incident, for instance. And here you look at the follow-up of the event. Incident. Of course, there's much more. Note that this is something that's been there for a couple of years and still open and under investigation. So there are things that I cannot speak of, but others I can't. So here there's a bunch of faces where I've been intervening. And let's look at a first attack we saw. What do you do when there's an event? The first thing you do is to start monitoring. You need to do this because you don't know what is happening, when or where, and you start rolling out and deploying tools. And let's look at the first manual event or incident. We go to equipment and we do a forensic study, analysis of the equipment. This means collecting all sorts of evidence you have in the memory, those that are volatile. Then you do switch off a disk. You clone the disk, and sometimes, depending on the environment, you cannot do this. So we do the recollection, and we do the investigation, and this is just a minute thing. This takes days. And we start investigating. Once we're here, we find that in the temporary directory, there's a folder called S18, F18, and then a PowerCell. And I like doing demos live, but also recording them in video just in case. So I come to the temp directory. I open up a PowerShell in order to show you how this is done. And I'll copy the root and let's see if I copied it well. This PowerShell, so it's run automatically. The bad guy had to do this, but he did in an automated mode. But I'm going to tell you a bit in detail. Here's a PowerShell. And there's programs in the memory, or supposedly. And I'll do the following. I open a CMD, I do a dir. This is a very dangerous command. Nothing ends, and then run, execute what the bad guy does. This program right here, this software. And what's it doing? So, scanning. I opened up a CMD, I wrote a command, and this is not a keylogger. This does is to inject code CMD, and it extracts information it wrote in the CMD. It's not a keylogger. It just dumps the information that administrator would run, and this generated a text file. First type of attack, and injection in a library that allows to get out commands from CMD. And anything that the user did, in this case the administrator, he put it in a text file. But here's our first attack vector that used PowerShell. And we say, and how did they run it as an administrator? Later I told you how they got this privilege. So, therefore, I'll skip it here. So what did it do? This is the sort of result you get. So it loads DLL in the memory, and it's not too difficult either. This is the result of the forensics analysis. Then you look for different processes: host, WScript, CMD, PowerShell, Python, anything that you put in the command environment, takes it out and put it in file. So it gives you information given by an administrator, and then the concept of some files, and you say, well, here we need to start monitoring. We start deploying, have to start deploying tools all over the network, and say, what's critical for you? Yeah, well, listen, you have risk management. Yes, no, this, that. Shall we activate the plan just in case? So you start generating alerts and alarms, and of course you start deploying tools in every single country, and to put in probes using software. We integrate it into a console where we can see what's happening. And here we start monitoring and seeing things, and we find this. We find that there's a very strange exe in place HTTPS, for instance. Looks like it, but it's not the same. And accessing through our platform until we get to the workstation, we find a detail here. We find that there's execution of this software on a hash, and this is generated by Sysmon. Sysmon is a Microsoft executable that doesn't come with a platform, and I recommend it because it's a very good tool in order to monitor any sort of event that happens in a machine. I use it all the time. It's wonderful. It's great, and this generates a hash, and this hash can be sent to virus to see if it's recognized. And I go, no. I keep trying with different manufacturers, and here we do investigation task. This we do with other government agencies. Do we have this? No, we don't have it. So what's happening here? Was that
Y fijaros un poco el detalle de lo que nos vamos encontrando. Primero con un editor, yo lo explico.
This run file with an editor that we use. We see that this has been done under Python. So here we take out the source code of the software, and here I have a video to show you.
Vamos a verlo. Bueno, aquí lo que hago simplemente es sacar el listado del ejecutable como tal. He intentado reproducir, evidentemente no puedo reproducir.
I tried to reproduce all the servers, but I'll try to reproduce the whole process on the machine. And what I'm doing here is to take out the pre-compiled code. And what it does is to take the pre-compiled code of the Python code. And here, with another tool, with this file, I take out the source code, I put in the pre-compiled code, and and it brings out the code. I send that to a file in order to be able to see it better. Here it is. And I can see the source code now, what we have. And this is, of course, it's been censored because of security issues, state security issues, and here's the whole code, and here we can study it and see what's happened. And what's happened? Well, very easy. First of all, there's a code that's works as a proxy. Why? In order to make commands that I'm sending anonymous. So by means of ports techniques, it's going to create a socket that will allow me to communicate with different machines. Second, sends information to an IP that's in a different subnetwork. It's got access to this machine that acts as a platform and a jumping board. There's I cannot go out from this machine, but from my proxy I can send things to the machine that can use the internet. So I take out commands, internal remote with access to internet, and it encrypts it so that attack controllers or analysts don't see it and cannot analyze it. So this is the encryption code, and we can see what it was transmitting and where, but that's a different machine. Now we continue with our tools, and all of a sudden, bang, there's an alarm, an explosion in zone 0. So what do we find? We find an attack. We called it AT101 because of the many things it can do. And I'm going to try and explain this without going into details because I don't know how much you guys know about programming. But the first thing that I find shocking is that users
¿Y qué es lo que saca? Bueno, primero dice
a basic script, and the first thing I get is a hidden window. Whatever you run with, you cannot be seen. And also there's an object called WMI, This is the great unknown in Microsoft. It's been in Microsoft as long as the operating system, since it was created. It was in Windows 95. And this has been evolving, and we have it in servers. And it's a whole bunch of libraries that interrogate the operating system.
So what does the bad guy do? Well, he decides to execute a process startup. That is, he's going to run a process when the machine boots via wmay, and is going to execute an excel.bat. It's a WBA using WMI technology. Do you know how this is represented in Windows? It doesn't say the bad guy is executing this file. No. It says a WMI provider has been created. And that's all it says. The bad guy knows and takes advantage of that technique. So he launches an excel.bat in hidden mode. And what does this file do? We will see it if this works. So I'm going to run it, and in the meantime, I will explain it. I double-clicked it. The window popped up very quickly. And here are a couple of tiny files that we'll look at in a minute. Now I'm going to go back to the presentation, and I will tell you a little bit what this execution is about. The excel.bat is something I've tampered with for training purposes for you to see, but this is something that you don't usually see. And this is what it does. I'm going to extract everything so that we can see it more clearly. So this excel.bat launches a CMD. WB is launching a BAT, launching a BAT. Then a PowerShell in hidden mode with the bypass command, so that the protection comes up, whether to verify if it is signed or not. And the top of the cake is that it executes a service called standby transfer. If I launch a socket, the firewall can detect it, and intruder detectors can see that there's something weird going on. But if I use standby transfer, this is a service in Windows in order to update the OS. So this is how the bad guys think. Well, I'm going to have Windows doing this instead of doing all the work myself. So they use the same self-updating service using the synchronous and asynchronous mode at the same time. This has probably happened to you when the machine goes and tells you the software has been downloaded, that you wish to install it, and you install it and you realize that you haven't actually downloaded anything. Anyway, so this execution directs to a Dropbox folder. But we've seen it with G Drive also, and also some providers of cloud servers. The bad guys use many different techniques. The destination is a.exe, and then they added on a login key that was launched with the event viewer. Well, back in the day, this was unrecognizable. It is now, but not in the past. So this goes inside the log so that it is run the next time it starts, and it's going to be run with maximum privileges. This is a UAC bypass. That is a bypass so that Windows doesn't tell me that there is a software trying to modify anything, because there are maximum privileges here. Finally, there is a pin launched so that it has time to run and to delete itself. So what happens if everything goes right? This is what happens. This has been modified. That exe.a downloads a JavaScript with mimikatz. Mimikatz allowed us to extract passwords from Windows via an automatized process. I've stopped it here, I can't go any further, of course, but here you can see how the Mimikatz is launched in the machine automatically in order to obtain the maximum number of passwords possible. So this is something that we are going to come across very often. Thanks to this bypass, the bad guy has access to almost everything. I've launched it twice, that's why it's twice here. As a result of this all, I had an index.js, and this is Mimikatz. Can you understand it? Of course you can. Look at it. Can you see it? The bad guys, they are so evil, but they are very good at the same time, and they are always using techniques in order to bypass the anti-malware, the perimetral. So if I come here, and then I go to the route, this is what the software did. It ran JavaScript and starts Mimikatz. This is all downloaded from the internet. It's a bit more complicated. So now back to the presentation. How did bad guys know about this? Well, we're always behind them. They are always ahead of us. So, after a lot of research, we found out that in System 32 inside Windows, there are about 235 run files. And if you ever double-clicked on them, most of them don't do anything, but some of them have an option called auto elevation that goes to true auto elevate. This means that these programs may be able to bypass the UAC. So what did we do? With internal utilities, the SigCheck utility, we obtained a list of programs which had auto-elevate, and we monitor them. Therefore, we prevented people from running these files when we aren't present. This was like a starting point in order to do more research. Then there are other types of attacks. This one was very hard for us to even believe, and even more to understand. Here we can see that there are a lot of Windows run files, most of them documented, but we found this one, RSW32, which registers dynamic libraries. It is a command pack that is very much used, and the bad guys research, monitor, and see what's going on. So we find a command line saying /s/PowerShell, etc., and then an IP that was very valuable to us. Of course, I'm summarizing how this all developed. But then there was this file that appeared in the first attack, the DLQS. And then NT64DLL. With that monitoring, we were able to see that there was something weird about this. What is this machine? Where is this located? So for training purposes also, I've created a very short clip reproducing it. On the right side, you have a Kali to show how we can take control over the Windows machine and reproduce the attack. Here we are launching Metasploit inside Kali. This is automatized. And here I'm using several different techniques. I'm going to stop it here. What I do first is to run it by hand. I generate the library, and I see that it establishes a session with Kali automatically. So by typing the library in the route, that is in the root in this case, I could see that there was a communication established. That was the first weird thing. Secondly, we introduced an IP and the same command for monitoring. So we were able to see that this executed a session on Kali. This way we realized that the session could be controlled. So this was also weird. That's when you start looking for hashes with these files, libraries, and when you feed again the tools in order to see where this is. And this isn't in the machine only. This was widespread throughout many machines and for a long time. Here there are all the evidences we need to analyze. What did we do about it? We used reverse shell. First, this command launches NT64 DLL that contains a shell. So, look at the technique they used. As you know, there is the dynamic data exchange vulnerability in Microsoft, although they don't admit it is a vulnerability. But what they did was to use COM+ objects. These are very old objects, and they enable communication between different parts of software. For example, a graph in a spreadsheet may be linked to a document in Word with several information through programming underneath, and it is used. First of all, the reg SV32 is trustworthy. It's on the white list. It's from Microsoft, and it's been certified by the company. So it sends out the chain, and it sends either a shell code or a PowerShell. If the shell code isn't executed, because I don't have the rights, I go to PowerShell. So what happens is that the URL ends up executing the PowerShell commands. What is important is the IP we saw in the beginning. What you realize is that the bad guy, when it's been in an organization for a long time, starts making mistakes because they think they are invincible. They think they are inside. They believe that they go unnoticed, and that's when they start making mistakes. And here is when we start researching, and this takes us to India, no less. That's when we say, wow, look at these Indians, they are well ahead of us. So, together with other colleagues, we started exchanging information and IPs because there is a team that is also researching communication on routers, switches, etc. So we deploy as in an offensive attack in order to reconquer our ground. So I tell all the members of the teams, send me all the information you have, send me an email with that information. And here's when we get a lot of different IPs. And if you take a closer look, you can see that the first IP, the one that ends in 154, is a compromised machine. And it is a food store, a takeaway food store in India. So we go inside the machine, we analyze the communication, and we see there is a route pointing at a router. So we see what is in that router. It is impossible to go into that router. Wow, admin, and we're in. We're so lucky. Amazing, we're inside. Now we can get more information. And now, where is this pointing to? It is pointed to China. So, we try admin again, and we're in again. That's when you believe you are the best hacker in the world, because you can just go inside any router you want just by using admin. So this was a Chinese university, and they were compromised as well. So we saw where it was pointing to also. It was pointing to a hotel too. And here's where things got complicated, because the agencies started saying, well, back in the day, some pirates attacked infrastructures in this hotel. So this is an important lead. And this is pointing to that IP. Here we have the information. We start exchanging that information with the agencies, etc. We moved forward in our investigation, and we found that talking to the Chinese guys, we asked them if they knew where these IPs came from, and they said that they know, of course, because they distribute IP ranges to local, smaller providers, and we can contact them to see what is going on. So they contacted a small operator in China, just one with 2 million users, which is very small in China. And they said, yes, we have granted this to this other organization. I don't know if you can see on the third line where it says KPTC. So that's when, after a lot of analysis, we realized of this. That's when we thought we made it. And that's when we thought Missile Man is going to hit us very hard. We could see it very clearly here. So we had the range and we had the organization behind it. What did we do after that? Well, we decided to give them a gift. And what is a gift? Well, you draft a few documents, use a few macros, and you say, welcome to China. That is a decoy. So, with the goal of having them taking information from us so that we can monitor them. I cannot disclose many screenshots, but we used this product, Red Sails, that is a free tool. So the attacker opened the run file, the Excel file in this case. Well, they opened it and we got their screen. We got where they were going, what they were doing. I cannot show it to you, but that's what we achieved. So this product, Red Sails, is on GitHub, and it enabled us to gain control over the devices that the bad guy had gained control over in turn. And here are some locations where they were. There was one in Hangzhou, then there was a store, an appliances store, and then a drugstore. So these are understood as hotspots where all the movement takes place. We continue monitoring and we see where they are going. Now, we can see that it moves to Pyongyang, to a shopping mall in Pyongyang. And here we can see 3 different machines in the same mall. That is 3 IP that we had geolocalized in the same mall. So, a meeting was going on, was taking place. So, that's when we started monitoring. With Sysmon and other tools, we monitored all the executions. We started creating Yara rules in order to minimize the impact. So we started trying to get hints. From this information, we tried to understand how this all happened or why this was caused. So we found this server from this company with this vulnerability. I've classified it now, but it used to be a 0-day. So this enabled us to enter into machines with user privileges. It was an admin machine. So you know that administrators can access all the machines. So how do they do that? FTPs, WinSSP, RDP, that is access to all the machines. So we thought this was the infection vector. And we saw the following with an application. They were able to exploit a technique that allowed us to obtain the password from the WinSSP, the RSP, etc. I'm going to explain it to you with a video clip. With this tool here, we can extract everything there is stored inside or with WinSSP. I'm going to create a connection to a machine. I'm going to use a login and a password. The password is password, and I'm going to store it. So what happens here is that with that utility called track, they exploited it and they managed to obtain the password to access other machines. Here you have the track, and here you see this word here, secret. They exploited this too. They were able to access this part of the registry, find out if there was a PuTTY, and they were able to obtain the passwords to the machines. This is one of the dangers. Admins never log in as users. They always log in as admins. So once they were logged in, they gave access to the bad guys to many, many systems. Another curious thing that we saw was this one. You have this environment with a sysvol folder with reading permits. Reading permits for all users, of course, that includes the admin. So we saw these files, groups, XML, scheduled tasks, services, and one of them contains this, the passwords. Well, we thought this must be very, very complicated. This is probably encrypted. And we actually alerted Microsoft. And the bad guys could know about this. I'm not saying that this was the infection vector. We understand that it was the other one, which was a lot easier. But anyway, everything was mixed up. So analyzing the actors taking part in this all, we realized that this could be the group, APT10. It is recognized as such. It is a team of Chinese pirates who were basically specialized in attacking organizations dealing with IT only. I mean, they wouldn't go for a drugstore. They attack IT corporations. Why? Because these providers have access to even more documentation and more passwords. Their goal is therefore to grab information and either use it for their own benefit or sell it. So as we can tell from the different agencies, they have millions of computers and they are trying to modify the switches they can access to firmware. This is very sensitive because they can ruin the entire communication, but they were able to achieve something. And this was an actor that we had to bear in mind. But because of the mode of operation they had, we ended up ruling them out. So we went to the next one, which was Bureau 121. Here's where the information is stored. This group is very opaque. If you tell them you have attacked me and Missile Man says, no, if I send you a missile, you will know it wasn't me. So, according to the agencies, this group has about 1,800 specialists. Well, in this country, people are really having a tough time. So, if I manage that my family can live in better conditions, I become a hacker without a doubt. That's why they have so many. This was also called the Dragon headquarters. So, as the agencies said, this was the point of operation. So, conclusions, in order to wrap up my talk now, the main conclusion is that there are many, many things. That's normal. Actually, nowadays, it's being said that this is the group that caused WannaCry, etc. So, first of all, vulnerabilities are not correctly managed. Secondly, the attack vectors are caused by a lack of trust in administrators. We need monitoring tools, not because they are doing something wrong, but in order to prevent attacks from the bad guys. Using admin accounts, the bad guys knew very well the different environments at all times. Then use of side movements, use of routers by compromised companies, use of routers without a password, use of routers of the brand Microtic. Most of them just used open routers, and then legitimate and vulnerated website. What did this involve? All this work, well, forensic analysis of services, nets, etc., and this in the run always. We integrated it with the SIEM, with our platform. We changed our policies. We reconstructed servers. This is like a fire. Because how much is what they took away worth? We will never know. And what are they going to do with that information? We'll never know. What does that represent? What does that involve to you? Mistrust. Then there were restrictive cuts in web surfing and very restrictive measures in order to minimize the impact. So that's why it's important to bear all this in mind. All the conclusions that we may draw, we cannot wait until the crisis takes place. This is critical. I want to raise awareness. That's something I love to do because we need training. If we don't have enough technologies, we need to continue training. We need to monitor all the time. Gartner says you may not be able to prevent the event, but you may be able to minimize its impact. Therefore, the more preventive you are, the quicker the solution is going to be. So this is translated into speed, agility, and resistance. Well, we also need to reduce the impact and the speed as much as we can. And then the issue of reputation. Our current decision-making is going to have an impact in the future. This is critical. Everything we do from now on is going to be critical in the future. If a company can get back on its feet after 3 days, after this sort of attack, that is amazing. But this usually takes 1 or 2 years because there are many other issues involved, including legal issues. So, if you have training, speed, reputation, and you take the good decisions, you will be reinforced after the event. So, I have a lot more to say, of course, but we don't have time for more, unfortunately. If you have questions, I'll be very happy to answer. There is a question over there. Hello? Well, hello, congratulations on your presentation. My name is Javier, and I wanted to ask something. Do you still have access to those computers in Korea? No, not anymore. Not me, at least. Maybe the others do. So did they finally realize that you accessed their computers? Of course they did. It wasn't me who did it personally. It was done by military commands, and then I am just a remote hand. I do what I'm told. So when you enter a different level, if you're at risk of conflict, for example, it's a different type of organization that takes over. Any further questions? Come on, don't be shy. No? Well, then we will leave it here. Thank you very much, everybody.